Hi, my name is Luke Askew, and the focus of this research note is to prove the hypothesis that democratic states form alliances more with other democratic states compared to non-democratic states, meaning that a democratic state is more likely to form an alliance with a state that is also democratic compared to a democratic state such as the US forming an alliance with a state such as Russia that is non-democratic. So I looked at an article by Andrew Bosch that from the Journal of Peace Research, and he dives into the micro foundations of systemic democratic peace, and he argues that democratic leaders actually invest more resources into war than autocrats do. And Bosch's main point is that increasing democracy will only have an effect on conflict to a certain point. At some point, that effect on conflict is likely to diminish. It's likely to stop. And so this plays a role into the democratic peace theory that we're talking about and whether the alliances form together or not with non-democratic states and democratic states. So, if it is true that democratic states form alliances more with other democratic states as compared to non-democratic states, then what we should see is in the Middle East, South Asia, and Eastern Europe, we should expect to see more alliances within the countries that are both democratic and less alliances where they're either both non-democratic or one is democratic and one is non-democratic. So what we did to determine this is we used a chi-square value in the chi-square test, and what that does is it really just pins together the variables and the values to see if the hypothesis is accurate. So what we got from this test is that there was 6 countries that were both democratic and allies, and there was one pairing of countries, I should say, that was both democratic and no allies. There was 15 pairings of countries that were not both democratic and allies, and 19 countries that were not both democratic and no allies. This gave us a chi value of 4.02, which is relatively large, meaning that our p-value was going to be smaller actually, meaning that it was going to be less than 0.05. So our p-value is actually 0.044, which is a relatively low p-value. And this proves that despite there being a lot of alliances between countries that weren't both democratic and they're still, out of the 7 countries that were both democratic, 6 of them actually formed allies and only 1 of them did not. So out of those 3 regions that we looked at, the Middle East, South Asia, and Europe, there was 7 countries that were both democratic and 6 of them formed allies, which proves that the hypothesis that democratic states are more likely to form alliances with other democratic states is actually true.